Hello and welcome everyone to the Circuit Playoffs Championship Sunday. Mifflin, I'm excited to do this one. My name is Gormizer, and like I just said, Mifflin is going to be joining me on this one. And Mifflin, it's so fitting that this weekend and this day, I think, is starting with the exact matchup that we started Friday with. Get a good rematch that me and you actually cast on Friday, and it's going to be a doozy to start this one out. But we're starting out here in Europe, and as you can see, it's been a tumultuous path for some of these teams. I think the biggest surprise has been Cold Llamas getting eliminated yesterday.
I mean, I didn't see it coming. I don't think really anyone did, but Smileyface played out of their minds. These guys are looking incredibly strong. Team play, individual performances all across the board from Smileyface just impressed me.
And it's actually almost worth noting that it was the only match that didn't go 3 games of all of the European sets. I think that's fun to see, and you'll see that the Poppies are waiting there for the winner of this next set with their 1-game advantage since they came from the upper bracket. So now it's going to be up to Smileyface to try and prove that they can do what they were unable to last time that they came through. It was close. They win, I believe, the first game, and then they lost 2 in a row. They were able to capitalize a lot on Belt Slap's positioning and change things up for them. But, you know, realistically, where are you thinking some of these changes need to be? Obviously, I think we were talking about it yesterday. Some of the Nemesis picks have left us wanting for more.
You took it right out of my mouth. That Nemesis pick, I haven't seen it get value yet. I really have not. Now, I've seen this Nemesis pick throughout the weekend a ton of times. 4 or 5 times we've seen it. Not a single time has it done anything of true relevant value. I would really prefer to see them go towards these more North America leaning picks. I think Thor could come out. I would really like to see some Hun bots. Daji works out a lot. Nemesis is only really a very strong counter pick against gods like Vamana, Cthulhu, Zhong-Kui, where you really need to strip away that defense and blow them up instantly. Short of that, Nemesis is lacking in truly survivability, lockdown, burst potential. I mean, I can go on. She's lacking.
Well, you get to see maybe some of their more, I want to say, just best performances that they were able to have through, notably, Zalia on the Nike, not on the Nemesis, but Bratz had an insane Vulcan game, of all things. I mean, you're talking about mid-lane mages that are getting pulled out, and, you know, you reach down, Poseidon maybe isn't too far-fetched because we've seen him here and there, but Vulcan is not someone who gets picked up often, I should say. And he had an awesome performance on him. I mean, he comes through and absolutely just knocks it out of the park.
Yeah, he manhandled the competition. He was just really aggressive. His team was ahead from about the 10-minute point onward, I want to say. And from there, he was just able to deal so much damage. The Kali and the Aphrodite combo wasn't able to lock him down. I think this god has a lot of exploitable weakness, but when you get the ball rolling like Bratz did, when you're hitting literally every ability, every ultimate that you shoot out hits at least 2 targets, it's going to work out no matter what god you pick.
I mean, definitely had a huge impact there in the mid lane. I think it is also worth noting Echrome, it's been very hit or miss, and some of the 1v1s maybe not going his way, but joining the team fights, that Hunter there for Smileyface has been a pretty big portion of their fights as well, so I'd say keep your eyes on him. Actually, yeah, we have the quadra kill that he was able to pick up throughout all of this, and I think that's something that's worth noting. Also bringing in something a little ridiculous. I mean, you don't get to see Kernanos that often, and the fact that it comes through, it does well, it gets a quadra and helps them win the game, I think just goes to show Smileyface they're much more in the zone of picking comfort picks right now than they are playing the meta.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. These guys disregard the meta. Blatant disregard for the meta. Maybe even disrespect for the meta. They're not interested in it. But I think that's partially their strength. When you don't play what everyone else is playing, no one has any idea what the matchup's like. No one has any idea what you might bring out in these high-stakes LAN situations. It's very hard to prepare against teams like this.
Unfortunately for them, they are going to go up against a team that is quite adept at dealing with other, well, I guess teams like this. Just going to take the phrase right from you. And that is Belt Slap, right? You've got Julio, Johnny, Zeros, Arkle, Trixtank. And the last time they played, there was a lot of interesting decisions, is the only way I can think to word it that's polite, from Belt Slap. Where Trixtank, you know, the one that was the most notable turnaround, was solo pushing a tier 2 while the rest of Smileyface was able to envelop him. There's been a lot where Zeros, I think, played a Kronos, unfortunately was able to not make that one shine as bright as he wanted. And it has come down to a lot to, hey, can Johnny do anything in this jungle? But also Julio, when he's comfortable in a lot of these picks, he's been one of the driving factors for this team and their success.
I think really Belt Slap is at their strongest when Julio is able to be that solo agent in the backline. Often, and especially on this tier pick, you'll see him just walk directly into the enemy jungle, maybe straight at their speed buff from his lane, force the enemy team to respond to him, and then the entirety of Belt Slap will be following up behind him. He'll maybe look for the Fearless to set up the first kill, and then they'll move on to an objective. It's been working out a lot for him, but sometimes he doesn't get off to those fantastic starts. Sometimes he gets a little bit camped by the enemy jungler, and he doesn't know how to turn off that aggression. I would like to see if Julio can really keep the momentum going without throwing so much risk into it.
And it's nice to see so many Kukulkan replays for him, specifically because it feels like he originally rang true as a one-trick pony, right? I mean, he comes through, has phenomenal tier games all the time, and then there were a lot of times where if tier was banned, he would stop being the factor that you'd be looking at. So knowing that he has a couple of fallback gods here is going to make the biggest difference for him. And it also is worth noting that he does force teams to ban out tier. I mean, that was something that we saw the last time these two played, I believe yesterday as well. In those top 6 bans, you expect to see, Persephone, Yemoja, sometimes Camazotz, but tier making it up there is a very big deal. So we'll have to see if Smileyface opts to do that one. So getting the picks and bans here for game number 1. And Smileyface will be second pick here, so having maybe that counter pick, it does open up Belt Slap to grab that first pick that they won. If tier's left open, I highly expect him to be scooped up for Julio.
But even if tier is left open, I would agree that it would be a fantastic pick for Belt Slap. But when you have Johnny on your team, we've seen him play Bakasura, and we've seen him play Kali, and those are his 2 best gods, bar none. It's not even close compared to his Thor or anything like that, the more standard assassins. So I think we might see a priority there. We've also been seeing that Belt Slap have been prioritizing the Aphrodite lightly. I'm not sure that I'm a huge fan of that for them. When you have someone as good as Zero, someone who can absolutely carry the game on his own, I much prefer seeing him on gods like Agni, gods like Hebo, things that can just absolutely snowball from the mid lane.
Well, we were talking earlier about Smileyface and how I'll just say it, they play unorthodox gods almost all of the time. We were talking more about the Nemesis, but that Kumbhakarna is something that they've been running specifically over into the solo lane. I think Khepri, he's high priority enough that it makes sense for him to go away. And Aphrodite, realistically, it is only the Kumbha that is standing out in terms of bans, but I think it showcases that Belt Slap has been doing their homework. It was something I believe that helped him yesterday, it helped him on Friday here for Smileyface. So just being able to slow that down, I mean, effectively having a second Guardian is a huge deal when it comes to late game. Yeah, you might not be as strong early on as a tier, but later on, especially as a Kumbha, you just knock them up into the air, and now you have free reign.
Free reign, free setup, one of the best peeling gods in the game. It makes sense to me that that's how Lamogao likes to play his solo lane, especially considering that Smileyface really do like to wait it out until the late, group up, and then start to look for their engagements. I think Belt Slap really got a feel for that playstyle on day 1 of the LAN this weekend. I believe that we might see a very long set here. I think that both teams are going to go for late game leaning squads.
That actually, until you mentioned his name, my brain wasn't firing all synapses specifically for Mogao, because last time he brought out Nox solo as well. So if you're looking at trying to predict this team, I'm going to go ahead and say throw it out the window. But Yemoja Nike, that's a pretty good start for anybody, I think, in this case. Do you think it's worth picking that ROM first to give up what you have in terms of sustain and slows?
I think that Rom is the second best hunter in the game right now. He's so absolutely versatile. His ult is a huge asset. Not only is it great for confirming kills, but even when you're worried about maybe an objective being taken by the enemy team, you can throw up that ult for a Hail Mary steal. I think that he's very strong. But giving up Yemoja and Nike in exchange, Yemoja is going to absolutely dominate the long lane if we see her go towards that support role. Nike's a fantastic flex pick. We don't know if that's going to be jungle or solo. I think Belt Slap might have got the lesser end of this deal.
Well, they get Ganesh and they get the Yanis, which we know Zeros likes to play, so I expect it to do well over here. And last time it was able to run lots of circles around Smileyface. The question is now how to lock that one down. And they're going to go for the Hera. They're one of the few teams as well right now that are picking it up and making it look good. Why is it that Hera, 9% win rate, for this weekend, 0% win rate, so I guess that's maybe something else to throw out there. But we've seen her find such success in the Pro League. Why is it that nobody else seems to want her?
I think it's truly the lack of mobility. The self-peel is okay. She's got the polymorph. She can drop Argus as that bubble buddy and, never want to travel alone. But I think that this Hera pick has been a little bit lacking in the SPL just because the execution is very hard to do. And at these higher levels of play, it's a lot easier to punish gods that have really no way to escape. Even this game, for example, this Hera, if she's dropped into a Dharmic Pillars, or Dharmic Pillars are dropped around her, rather, what is she going to do? She can sit inside the middle of it and take damage from the entirety of Belt Slap, or she can try and walk through it, and due to her immobility, she'll probably take about 3 ticks of damage. It's going to be very hard for her to escape the engage from Belt Slap with only the 3 picks that they have now.
Well, you had mentioned Johnny earlier, and Smileyface seemed to be taking exact notes from what you had mentioned. Bakasura isn't on the list, but Kali, Daji taken away here. Jingwei Uller banned out by Belt Slap. We saw what Echrome was able to do on this Kernanos yesterday, so I anticipate it looking pretty good here as well. And when it comes to comfort picks, this is something Smileyface, you draw parallels to some of their drafts yesterday against Cold Llamas, and they found a lot of success with these, but it is that Bakasura locked in for Johnny. How you liking the auto-attack true damage into Smileyface's comp?
It's gonna work out. He's got fantastic matchup in a Hera. If Bakasura is allowed to hit someone and they don't have an escape, he's happy. My man is pleased about it. Is Cernunos, he's going to have a very hard time escaping as well. He's likely going to have to commit his ultimate to avoiding the Regurgitate. I think there's a lot that Belt Slap can do with his auto-attack build, and having a Vamana with you as well means that 2 people are going to be in Smileyface's backline just absolutely holding down the W and M1 keys, trying to find some early pickups. I think Smileyface has a lot of tools to engage themselves, but as far as peel goes, it's going to be hard. I think Yamoja might have to commit the ultimate. The stuns are going to have to be on point. This Hera is going to be very hard to keep alive against Belt Slap's comp.
And honestly, it feels like it's just outright damage. Yanis, Bakasura, Vaman, Ram all coming through just to make sure that they're going to be able to lock people down. And then sustain, right? Yamoja, Guan, Nike's going to have her shield, Hera has her shield, Kernanos has that built-in lifesteal. It feels very much like Smileyface are maybe trying to plan on outliving Belt Slap through a lot of these fights. Do you think that that's going to end up playing a big role? Like, is anti-heal going to be necessary to beat down Smileyface, or do they have the damage pretty much out of the bat?
I don't think that we need Belt Slap to pick up anything crazy. We don't need to see the double onk like we saw yesterday, but just standard lifesteal should be enough to deal with a Yamoja and a Guan Yu as far as in-combat healing goes. Belt Slap's entire strategy in the late game should revolve around going into the team fight and winning the first one. If Belt Slap has to disengage and then re-engage, they've already lost just because of Smileyface's out-of-combat healing.
That's going to be just a massive factor. If you aren't able to get them in that first fight, it's going to be difficult. Yanis, yeah, he can escape, but again, it's that re-engage that comes through. Cool, you might be able to jump back in. Let's say Kernanos is low. Unfortunately, the rest of the team won't be. So it's going to be Smileyface playing the game of sustain. So let's go down to Dave and see how game number 1's going to go.
Always appreciated. Goran Mifflin, thank you very much. It is Dolson and Alpha Jackal on the call, and then, of course, Doug on the camera here for a matchup, we expected earlier in the week because that's what was scheduled, but maybe not one this late on. Belt Slap, Smileyface, both in the lower bracket here looking for a place in the finals. You guys at home, how do you think this one is going to go? Make sure to vote in chat. We'll show those results here in a little bit. As for you, Alpha Jackal, which way are you leaning on this one?
It's difficult to say which way I'm going to be leaning, considering the experience from Belt Slap should carry them through most of their games, but Smileyface has shown that they're no strangers to the upset. And for me, Smileyface are going to have to be building shells, and more shells, given Belt Slap's primary damage-dealing targets are going to be, well, auto-attack based.
Right, you look at one already picked up here for Silenced, and then that kind of lends itself to the mindset of Belt Slap in these team fights as this game goes on. Johnny wants to jump his way into the backline, much the same as what Julio is going to be looking to do. So would you say that you look at this Belt Slap composition, it's all about getting to maybe a mid-game point where this Bakasura and this Vamana start to come online and can find their way into the backline?
I'd say Belt Slap have to get off to a really good start in this game, and like we said, they're really good at getting off to these starts, especially with Johnny on one of his signature picks of Bakasura, because if they do fall a bit too far behind, then the outlast potential coming out from Smileyface is going to be too much for them. especially if they do end up getting a second shell, upgrading it quite early. That's 4 basic attacks that Arkil, Johnny, Julio have to chew through before they're even allowed to do damage. At that point, the shields come up for the Hera and the Nike. Chrome's going to be able to use his ultimate to help, delay the fight even more. Then Mogal's just going to run into the back line and zone out as much as he can.
Well, it is 70% from the chat for Beltslap. I would say that is pretty fair. The long lane, though, maybe the opposite numbers here. Smileyface finding a good bit of pressure, though 1 level behind Arco and Trixtank on the other side. And I think maybe a lot of it hinges on this long lane here for Beltslap. Of course, all over the map, we want to see this team get off to a fast start. But when you pair this Ganesh in the ROM, getting through an early game of a Yamoja and a Kernanos is certainly no easy task.
No, and if they get to the midpoint of the game, they get 10 minutes without having received a death or just staying even, then they could consider themselves, highly lucky and consider that a win. As you said, the pressure is just going to be insane from them. Rom usually does get pressured by himself because of his Astral Arrows, able to clear all the minions quite quickly, but you really can't push up that well against a Yamoja.
Yeah, it's really that level 5 kind of pivot point, I think, here for Trixtank. I mean, you can help clear out these waves a little bit with your 1, but once those Dharmic Pillars come online, not only does that maybe help out in lane a little bit, preventing or setting up ganks for your team, but when Trixtank looks to roam elsewhere on the map, Dharmic Pillars, such a massive destruction tool.
And looks like they're just going to let them back as well, right in front of their faces. It tells me that Arkil Trixtank probably want to back after this wave as well, have no interest in fighting, and that's most likely what they are going to do. Maybe they can rotate to the Oracles as well, just to give themselves some extra farm, but it's going to be the back looking to keep pace for pace in terms of the builds. So if they fall behind in their items, then it's going to be difficult for them to even fight back into this.
Yeah, it's something definitely to keep tabs on over there in the long lane. Now, I think a fun thread to follow throughout this game is, of course, going to be in the mid lane as well. Zero's, a household name in the Smite community. Bratz, over this weekend, maybe has started to put himself in that conversation. A bit unconventional in a few of his mid lane picks here this weekend. Ones were in the pick ban phase where we're saying, I don't know why this guy's playing this. I think the Agni came out a couple of times. The Vulcan certainly looked good in some of their wins. Now he's going to move over to the Hera. So large expectations, I think, for the Smileyface mid laner, especially when you're going up against the talent in Zeros.
And especially after the performance he had yesterday on that Vulcan, like you said, in picks and bans, didn't look like the strongest pick at that time going against all those healers, but had an absolutely monstrous performance on it. And he's been largely left alone here in the mid lane, just giving himself a bit of extra farm. Sort of the similar playstyle that Beltslap like to do. They leave Zeros alone to get himself farmed up. And so far, it's all good for Smileyface as they find themselves with a 500 gold lead. That's mostly going to come down to their jungle and mid difference. You can see both of them one level ahead.
Yeah, does any of that surprise you, though, with the gods that are selected in here for the mid lane over in the jungle? I mean, it's effectively a 1-level lead in the mid, maybe half a level as Zeros now catches up. But if you're kind of looking at this 5-minute mark, who's maybe happier with the game being largely equal at this point?
I'd say both teams are quite happy with how it's gone. Beltslap, they don't want to fall behind because it just means that Smileyface are going to be too tanky to really chew through with the competition that they have. I mean, while Smileyface, they don't want Beltslap to snowball this game as Arkil's forced to go up to the sky early. Chrome uses his beads to get his dash off from that silence. Arkil puts a lot of damage back on, and the rotation from Johnny is here, going to be spotted out on the ward.
And maybe if we zoom in on that question, it's Arkil and Trixtank that are happy that they haven't found death yet. We saw how much pressure Silence and E-Chrome were putting on this long lane very early on here in the game. Now you're starting to get to the point, you can sense this from Johnny moving his way deep into the backside of the Smileyface jungle, but is going to now move back over towards that mid lane. Always going to be difficult to gank a Hera. I mean, you kind of look at a lot of what Smileyface has in the question of backline dive versus what type of peel Smileyface might have to deal with that. I mean, fighting into a Nike, fighting into a Yamoja, fighting into a Hera certainly won't be easy for Johnny and Julio here this game.
The shields that are going to be happening in that mid-jungle combo are going to be absolutely insane, and then Argus as well to provide a bit of self-peel with that knock-up, just disruption 24/7 around there. And we also don't really talk about the fact that the Rend has a disarm on it. It's sort of an underlooked factor about Nike's kit because of just how much damage she outputs, the shield, the slow, the utility that you get from it, that the disarm becomes almost a non-factor at most points.
It does some decent damage, and it's going to do a good job in keeping Julio and Johnny in check, maybe on that back line a little bit. We were wondering, actually, where some of those long lane builds might go. Arkle and Trix Tank forced back at maybe an uncomfortable time. Two different mindsets at this point over in the Hunter department. Echrome opting to finish up those ninja tabbies. Nice double stun there from Silence, but it is Belt Slap that locked down the Oracles nonetheless. But Arkle has opted just to complete that Devourer's Gauntlet first thing overall. Is that anything really worth looking into at this point? Does that tell you anything one way or the other, Boots versus completed Divas?
For me, if you're looking at finishing Boots first rather than completed Devos, it tells me you want to be rotating out of the lane a bit earlier, want to be fighting and defending your buffs, maybe even aggressing onto the opposition buffs early on. And Arkle gets caught by a beautiful River's Rebuke. Dark Pillars come out in response, and Arkle's quite safe up in the sky, and maybe could turn around with the rotations coming out from Zeros and Johnny.
How many times have we seen this? Now, well, I guess a couple over here in the long lane, and Ultimate sets things up. Zalia rotating through, Johnny hanging just behind as well. That's the up-down from the Nikeus. Trix Tank blocked his way back, but Johnny has found his way for free into the backline. It's the Silence from Echrome to slow down the Bakasura, but the up-down is there, and First Blood is as well. Johnny, he'll swing first here, but he's not done. Zalia is going to try to leap away and will be successful in doing so. It only seemed like a matter of time, and it is finally the long lane where the First Blood will strike.
Well, Johnny gets hit by a beautiful Royal Assault there from Brotz, forces him out defensively, but it's still not done over here on the duo side. Trix Tank quite low, could look like he might fall. Brotz coming in, and there comes the Argus drop. They're looking at Argyle with a good beat, but the Royal Assault, we saw how much damage it did to Johnny. It just obliterates Argyle.
My God, that was half of his HP. I mean, Argus slams down and does, a good chunk of it. Some auto attacks chip Arkle down to half, and then the big fists swing through and put Arkle down one final time. So when it's all said and done here, Alpha Jackal, it's one kill apiece. First Blood, of course, a little extra gold associated with that. Over to Johnny. Zeros needs to be careful here. We've already seen plenty of damage from Brotz. But there is a return kill from Brotz on the back end of it. You're looking at kind of how things pan out there. Could you make an argument for either team coming out ahead?
I think the only reason Belt Slap come out ahead is because you get the First Blood bounty. Both kills are on the ADC. Both kills are onto the ADCs. Both kills go to gods that you really want to get ahead in the early game. So it's almost a wash apart from the First Blood bounty.
Both teams probably happy with the way things are here. Dead even still in gold, though this is what we've kind of come to expect from some of these EU teams, whether it's Belt Slap versus Smileyface or the close 3-game set we saw yesterday between Belt Slap and the Poppies. Slow, methodical, they want to plan out their moves and make sure they're not making big mistakes across the board. Now I think it's big onto Johnny. He's gotten a little bit of gold in his back pocket, gotten that Golden Blade completed, already moving in to that next Katana. These next big rotations may be the largest onus on the jungler for Belt Slap.
Yeah, well, he needs to back and finish that Hater Katana as soon as he can, and that's when his kill potential goes from medium to extremely high. And Echrome, he doesn't realize what's coming as Johnny and Trix Tank around the back here. Dark Pillars cuts off an escape, and he's forced to use his speeds to get through that cripple feed.
Echrome does use the ultimate as well. A little bit of self-peel there for him. I'm surprised he was able to make it out alive. Brotz in on the rotation. Argus drops down from the heavens. A good silence from Trix Tank, but we've seen it once and we've seen it again. Brotz will slam down the damage, and Trix Tank takes a tumble. Rotations from the mid laner certainly have been successful, and it's Belt Slap again that look to be starting these fights, but it's a great rotation from the Smileyface mid laner to swing second.
And the Gold Fury is going to be started with the rotation from Mogao as well. Blink in the backside. Smileyface secured the Gold Fury. And Belt Slap under the Kosh here already. Arkle going to get slowed down to his tower.
Wow.
It doesn't even have his beads up. Zelia gets a 3rd kill of the game. Backcaps invaded as well. Zeros wasn't realizing that they were done. And Smileyface have opened up the first proper lead of the game here.
Yeah, this is brilliant from Smileyface. I mean, again, remember, this is the first matchup we saw this week, and it was that because this is the SOC qualifier in Smileyface versus the #1 and undefeated up to this point team in Belt Slap. Of course, they lost yesterday, first loss of the season so far. This Smileyface team continues to impress. They've now pulled themselves 1,500 gold in the lead here, about 12 minutes in to this game. And I kind of mentioned it just prior to that Gold Fury attempt. It seems like Belt Slap are the ones trying to take these fights over on the long lane side of this map. It works out for First Blood that first time, but it's maybe better answers, better rotations from Smileyface to win those fights.
I just don't really think they're utilizing the Janus rotations to their fullest potential.
Right.
Zeros is notably one of the best Janus players out there. He plays incredibly safe, always puts out a ton of damage on this pick, as you can see, top damage for his team right now. But the portals seem to be more reactionary from his ultimate. They don't seem to be using it to rotate and catch Echrome or catch Mogao when they're at the opposition tower. It just seems like it's more used for damage and just to rotate when they see that Brotz is already making his rotation.
You certainly can't count out Belt Slap just yet. It is a relatively small gold lead, all things considered, especially when you look at the composition they have built. We haven't gotten to the point where the solo laners have rotated into these fights yet either. No Cursed Ankh picked up for Smileyface just yet, so you start to look at a point here where maybe you get some solo lane pressure in Julio. Might need to be the one making a big difference in the backline of some of these fights.
Yeah, they said it on the desk that Julio can be one of those decision makers, can be one of those playmakers and win factors here for Belt Slap.
Right.
He has been historically in the past on that tier, didn't perform as great as it could have done yesterday, but he's on a Vamana, a very similar pick, wants to just rush into that backline and disrupt onto the ADCs, disrupt onto the mages. And he has the tools to do so, we just need to wait for him to come make his rotation like Mogo did that one time.
Now, it's always interesting to follow the builds of the Vamana. That somewhat depends on whether it's jungle or over in the soul lane. Has gone Breastplate of Valor, first completed item overall. And then Talisman of Energy, maybe an interesting pickup here, Alpha Jackal, his second item overall, but maybe a small skirmish here in the mid lane will prevent us from diving into that any further. Zeros would have been met with a large chunk of damage thanks to the Royal Assault, but is able to portal his way away. But digressing back to the solo lane build point, does that stand out to you, a Talisman of Energy pickup here for the Vamana?
I think it's a really underrated item, especially on gods who want to have that basic attack capability, like for mana. I honestly think it's also quite underrated on Cthulhu, because just that extra bit of movement speed, extra bit of basic attack allows Cthulhu to stack up his passive a bit easier to then break the gods to get, a bit more damage mitigation. But on the side of the Vamana, it allows it to stick to targets a lot easier.
And you can see kind of the mindset there. Obviously, it's a good pickup thanks to some of the utility it provides, but also that magical protection. Most of the damage here being provided by Brotz in these last few fights, thanks to that 2-0 slash line. Shield of Regrowth as well for Lamogao. So healing certainly is going to be a factor in the game. We've of course touched on Cursed Ankh and how that might be necessary here for Smileyface, and I think the desk talked about it a little bit. Is there enough healing, do you think, on the Smileyface side that Belt Slap might feel a need to move in to some of those items? Obviously, Divine Ruin early on here for Zeros. Do you think that's enough, or you might need a little extra?
You definitely need a bit more anti-heal, but outside of Divine Ruin, the fight does break out. Looking for Brotz here. He gets through the Rib's Rebuke. The Regurgitate is still there. Julio's made his rotation confirmed for once, and Sailor could be next up on the death list.
Down beneath the Tier 1 tower, and Julio finds the kill. We told you this game might change once the solo laners rotate through. The line of communication was cleared there for Belt Slap. We need Brotz out of this fight as soon as possible to prevent this Hera from absolutely melting our front and backliners. Lamogao still here defending this Tier 1 tower. Could be a dive with Johnny hanging close by, but it is not. Belt Slap pull themselves right back into this game, back into the lead to the tune of 500-600 gold, thanks to a nice dive and a couple of kills.
And they're also got themselves in a good position to take down this Oni Fury, which has just spawned. But Smileyface, they know that this is a potential for them to take, so they made their rotations, they made sure that they're in defensive positions to stop them from taking this objective. But the Golden Blade here for Johnny, that first item, has just allowed him to build up this 2-level lead passively over time, because the second he builds this item, he becomes the fastest clearing god in the game. Just, it's absolutely insane how much farm he can take over somebody who is very similar in the fact that they've got AoE basics.
Yeah, you look at Zalia, 2 levels behind now, Johnny in the jungle. There obviously a lot of that, you know, first blood, of course, for Johnny, another kill and an assist there as well. But the gap is widening. It has gone to 3 levels in me talking about that here. The widest gap so far in this game. So the jungle is something absolutely to keep your eyes on. In the moment, though, we're going to be keeping our eyes on this Oni Fury. Julio far out front, just playing separator, as Bratst is there as well. Down low, E-Chrome close by, potentially in for the steal. Belt Slap slightly hesitant on it. E-Chrome does pop those beats, so we'll be down for this next fight. Cautious, our Belt Slap right now. Don't want to fully commit to this Oni Fury. It's Johnny still over in the mid lane, so not a fully reinforced fight yet. Both teams just kind of poking and prodding, but don't want to fully commit.
Azalea is going to get poked and prodded here by Johnny. That could be the cue for the engage here. Up into the sky goes Arkle. They force out the Sentinel of Zeus from the Nike. That's probably cue for the goal for you to be taken here.
Yeah, Original has to pop the ultimate and back himself off. Zeros will get some more good damage on the back end of the fight. Lamogao under the eye of Trix Tank here. Ultimate start to fly thanks to Smileyface as the River's Rebuke. Azalea will leap away once more. Lamogao taken low as Arkle is on full-on attack mode. That's the dodge roll forward, but Johnny's found the kill in the back line. Zeros makes it 2 here for Belt Slap. Azalea quite low, no Sentinel of Zeus to get him out. Look at that damage from the mid laner. E-Chrome has turned around the fight elsewhere. Johnny will finally clean up the Nike. It's a 3-for-1. E-Chrome still lurking around the side. Trix Tank in a bit of an awkward position, but enough reinforcements from Belt Slap. A 3-for-1, big for the blue side.
Yeah, it's also big for Smileyface that he managed to kill Arkle, the main damage dealer, onto this objective. It still doesn't really matter too much because they do have Johnny on that back Asura to still provide that basic attack damage, but it looks like the pressure from just the dual lane alone from Smileyface is going to stop them from taking this Oni Fury. Mid tower does fall in consolation though, so Belt Slap do get themselves even more than just that 3-for-1 trade. So they open up a 3,000 gold lead here.
The only level lead over for Smileyface at this point is E-Chrome. Obviously was up a little bit further there in that fight. 9K in the experience department. So we talked, what was it, 2-3 minutes ago about how Johnny had a 3-level lead in the jungle. That has ballooned to a 6-level lead here 19 minutes into this game. The first blood, you know, is one thing. Zalia was there on the rotation to kind of counter out. We're talking a few minutes in that first blood fight. But now you look at a Bakasura who's nearly level 20 before anyone else on Smileyface is even level 18. Got to be worrisome here for Smileyface. Might have to change up some of your team fight options.
And it looks like he might be building into a Toxic Blade as well here as his 6th item, just to reduce some of that healing. Through space and time comes out to stop the Oni Fury from Smileyface. It is warded by the Oracle, so Belslap knew that was going down. Arkle is by himself over here on the left-hand side, as is E-Chrome. Positioning so far is going to be primarily around this Oni Fury for the next 5 minutes, I would say. Yep. At which point you could say Belt Slap might even want to go ahead and give it up for the Fire Giant.
Yeah, it's something you absolutely have to consider, especially when you think back to just a few moments ago, Belt Slap okay to kind of whittle down that health bar to about half HP, but never fully committed. More so just trying to beckon Smileyface in, I suppose, for a fight, which ended up going 3-for-1. In Belt Slap's favor. It is catch-up, though. I mean, we catch-up job now for Arkle over in that long lane. We've talked about how much of a lead Johnny has. Maybe the life raft here for Smileyface is the fact that your Hunter and E-Chrome has pulled himself a good lead. Won't stall out Belt Slap from starting up this Oni Fury, though, on the left-hand side of the map. Johnny is close forward. Bratst rotating through. Arkle doing plenty of damage. At the moment, though, a bit awkward in the positioning department for Belt Slap with Johnny leaping himself away. Won't fully pull off this Oni Fury. Julio hanging close by as well. Both teams waiting and hoping, maybe for the engagement. It's Lamogao now. That dashes over onto Julio. Oni Fury down to 10% HP. Trix Tank playing the great separator will drop down the Dharmic Pillars in the backline, and Julio has gone big. He's swinging away onto Bratz. Can you finish off the Hera? It's one of the most important things you can do if you're Belt Slap, and Bratz goes down first. Now, the re-aggression from Belt Slap will continue. 4 members of Smileyface left back by this red buff. Up, down from Zalia will silence out by Trix Tank. Looking for the disarm here. Won't be fully successful. Maybe an Oni Fury, though, for Smileyface.
Oh, but Johnny's around the back. He doesn't have his Regurgitate available, but they don't know where he is. The takedown comes in. Julio's quite low on the front line. Johnny forced back by E-Chrome's damage. Zalia over the wall, looking to try and stop this back and surfing coming in once again. Gold Fury still down about 1/3 health, and they're still looking for this engagement. Trix Tank is low, and he might be the target.
It's 1 kill for Belt Slap when it's all said and done, but the health bar's so low. They can't maybe fully commit to a fight unless you lock down one guy. And it's Original here who goes down. Lamogao is going to have to dash out as well. Finally, the Fury is taken away, and it's Smileyface who will now be 2 for 2 in the Fury department. But it is Belt Slap who walk away in the grand scheme of things with a couple of kills. Oni Fury will be nice at this point, though, Alpha Jackal, for maybe buying a little bit of space here on this map.
It'll buy a tiny bit of time for them, but it's not the best Fury that it could have gotten. I would have much preferred if it was a Primal Fury, because then it just provides a bit more pressure for them onto the Pyromancer, onto the Fire Giant, also allows them better steal potential due to the extra damage that it would bring.
Well, it's Belt Slap feeling comfortable here. They found themselves 3,000 gold in the lead, and Johnny will solo make his way over onto Bratz. The damage from the mid laner, not enough. 2-0 is how Bratz started out this game, and then the line of aggression has been clear from Belt Slap from there on out. Now 2-4 is Bratz, and it only seemed like a matter of time that Johnny would get to a point where he could do just that. Blink onto the mid laner, regardless of a support being there, and take her down.
Yeah, and it was beautiful play by Johnny because he holds onto his Regurgitate until Bratz starts up the Argus drop down. Because at that point, that's the only thing that Johnny would be able to get peeled from. That knockup gives Bratz enough time to get away, but just uses that Regurgitate as a CC immunity option. Doesn't have to use his beats, which are still currently down. Beautiful play.
And we start to check back in with Julio as well, who looks to do a lot of what Johnny is aiming to do here in this game. Has rounded out his build with that Hasten Katana and then Hide of the Nemean Lion, interestingly enough, there from Julio. So a bit of a hybrid build coming out of that solo lane, and where Johnny has obviously been doing a lot of the backline dive at this point. Julio at 304 will be able to do so, you know, maybe just the same. Still no Cursed Ankh picked up for Smileyface. Everyone's at level 12, and there won't be a Cursed Ankh here in this game.
No, it's going to be the double shell. Both of them have been upgraded as well. Maybe Mogao could have skipped on the teleport to go for a second relic, much like Julio likes to do in these games. It could have been an option for him, but instead, go for that early breastplate of Valor, put him under a bit more pressure than he would have liked. Though it is a bit more difficult for Smileyface to take the fights into the Vimana. Just kind of rely on some anti-heal, which they haven't built into any of just yet. So this
right.
Vimana actually has some free reign at the backside.
Right, something to certainly be concerned about. It's a free Pyromancer now for Belt Slap. The upgraded shells are going to work wonders, especially if you can kind of find max team value with a few of those. You might need him here if a fight starts to break out around this Fire Giant. Lamogao is around, will poke his head in there, but the rest of Smileyface not in range. Belt Slap have not pulled off the FG just yet, but will, as Trix Tank is down to about half HP. Respect the call from Belt Slap. You've gotten yourself this 5k gold lead, far ahead of the enemy team. Why not give it a go?
Honestly, I thought Smileyface didn't have an idea that it was going down at that point, but the slight rotations from Mogao sort of gave him an air into it, and then sort of think, oh, there actually are a Fire Giant, guys, we need to rotate and stop them from doing this, otherwise it's a really difficult game for us. 5,000 gold down, something they can fight into on their own terms if they get a good engagement. 5,000 down, 5,000 gold down and a Fire Giant down, it's on to Belt Slap to make mistakes, and they rarely do.
Yeah, it's a team that doesn't make many. Though Smileyface have shown us here this weekend that SOC is but a Smite league here at this point, as they've taken the game to one of the best in the world time and time again. Really, it's Arkle, the only one that's kind of playing catch-up for Belt Slap here. He was a few minutes ago. It's E-Chrome who's reached level 20 before his Hunter counterpart. Build really one Wind Demon behind, so both hunters will still be providing similar value here. It's the Fire Giant that is the next big target for Belt Slap. They have shown that they're somewhat cautious around these objectives. You look at the Fury count, both of them over to Smileyface, but Belt Slap, I'd argue, had started both of them. So you wonder how confident they'll be feeling around this FG, though they should be with the big gold lead.
I'm actually surprised that Echrome elected to go into the Wind Demon rather than the Poison Star. Just reduce the damage coming out from Johnny. Speaking of which, he's found his way onto Echrome. The shell has been forced early on. Free Space and Time also does hit Chrome, but doesn't do as much damage as I thought it would. The fight still continues with Julio going engaging on the backside.
Oh my goodness, he's beneath the tier 2 tower. There's some good shell value for you. Julio immediately has to turn tail. Argus on the chase. Big stun from Lamogao is going to keep Belt Slap at bay just for a moment. Looks like Julio is going to be able to escape alive, but can't say the same for Bratz. First to go down in the engagement again is the mid laner of Smileyface. Tier 2 tower provides safe haven just for a second for Smileyface as Belt Slap will turn away. Health bars middling, so an FG attempt might be risky, but it's a kill onto Bratz nonetheless. 2-0 has now become 2-5 for the hair out of the mid lane.
Bratz there just too aggressive with his chase down. Azalea does jump in, looking to try to kill Julio. Julio 1 health, managed to get his dash off to clear the path. But then Bratz left on an island. Azalea without any form of appeal. The rest of the team still basically near the tier 2 tower. Johnny gets a free meal at that point, put himself to 5-0. But Fire Giant gets started up here by Smileyface. Belt Slap do notice what's going on because of Julio's rotation. Through Space and Time cuts the team in half, but doesn't cut anybody's health bar.
Well, there's 3 ultimates still charging up here for Smileyface. A couple for Belt Slap as well, but Johnny does not need an ultimate. He just needs those auto attacks, and Echrome learns that the hard way. It's Dharmic Pillars from Trix Tank that sets up a lot of that zone, but it's Johnny who's right in range at 6-0-4 now. Has a Mantle of Discord to slow down maybe any return to offense from Smileyface. FG started up here by Belt Slap. Silenced, has to Riptide himself away. Argus down for Bratz tier. Sentinel of Zeus provides massive shielding for Original as he moves back into this fight, but Julio does not care. Trix Tank full in on the chase, and look at this Vamana tearing through the backline. Zeros will finish off a little bit of that damage, but it's free casting for Belt Slap here, fully on the chase. Down goes Zalia as well. The Riptides provides a little bit of gap closing potential for Johnny, but it's 2 down the stretch, 3 if you count Echrome, and now maybe back to the FG finally.
Oh, they're going to use the Through Space and Time to get to the Fire Giant as quickly as possible.
Yeah,
I love that play from Zeros. Finally, we see it use as a rotation tool rather than a damaging tool. Johnny just get himself a bit of extra movement speed around the back. Mogao, he can steal this. We saw it with wanting a Tallow Assault yesterday, so maybe the same thing happens here, but good zone by Trix Tank and Johnny means that Belt Slap secure the first Fire Giant of the game.
Yeah, and that might be where this one, I mean, not that it hasn't been broken open just yet, but the FG on 5 full members of Belt Slap would have been EFG. Had a couple moments gone by. But 5 full members with this Fire Giant buff. You look at 3 tier 2 towers still remaining. All 6 towers still up on Belt Slap side of the map. So you want to talk about negative map pressure. That's kind of what Smileyface have had here this game. So the gold lead will balloon just a little bit more for Belt Slap. A Primal Fury is going to get locked down here. And you got to start wondering about this Smileyface defense and what they might be able to put up.
I mean, for me, the Smileyface defense, the very initial parts of the fight, it's just come down to the fact that they haven't counterbuilt one single item. They haven't got any anti-attack speed to go into the triple basic attacks from Belt Slap. They haven't got any anti-heal on their side to go up against the mana and the lifesteal coming out from Arkil. It's just they've got into these cookie-cutter builds that they would put on these gods regardless of who's on the enemy team, and it's just not worked out for them. Julio's been allowed to run into the backline uncontested for the most part, and Arkil, Johnny, and Julio again haven't had their attacks being reduced one bit.
Yeah, they've a double winged blade option here for Smileyface, so more concerned about some of the slowing rather than maybe some of the chainsawing that is happening. Now you look at what Belt Slap are going to be looking to do on this offensive push. It's kind of a 2-2 split with Arkil bouncing back and forth, and with the lead that Belt Slap has built up, might not be a problem there. It's kind of wave clear at this point, something that Smileyface can do somewhat well. Waves not fully pushed in. But this is where sometimes you see these big games get reflected and turned around. Sometimes all it takes is a big combination, maybe a Sentinel of Zeus into an Argus draw, but maybe won't be happening here as Trick Tank has dropped down the Dharmic Pillars. It's River's Rebuke defensively. Bratz grabs himself some great shielding, but it's already E-Chrome down out of this fight. No more Hunter presence for Smileyface. Left side Phoenix drops, and Belt Slap are going to move to the mid.
Just that split was a bit too good there for Belt Slap. Johnny by himself forces out Zalia and Moog out to this mid Phoenix, and all of a sudden just the engaged snap happens from Belt Slap. I thought Smileyface were going to have a good Phoenix defense given their composition, but you know, they just tore them apart. They're tearing Bros apart at the backside here. Johnny gets it before he gets into the fountain. He finds this mid lane mage. 2 and 7 deaths in a row, and I don't think they're going to be able to kill this back to as well as the peel is too good.
Yeah, Johnny's still in this fight. This might just be the game. Lamogao back into the fountain. It's just, where do you put your attention if you're Belt Slap? Well, it's finally back onto the Titan. Dharmic Pillars will complete the job, and Belt Slap will get it done in 31 minutes.
Yeah, it's a clean performance from them. They
was.
took their time with this game. They gave the respect that Smileyface deserved to them. I think back in the very beginning of this tournament, they went in a bit too, I wouldn't say arrogant, but a bit too relaxed and got punished for it by taking, you know, a loss there. This time, clean and throughout, recognized that Brotz was the issue and killed him consistently.
Yeah, again, it was kind of this reiterated thought that I kept having where it's like, damn, how are you going to deal with this Hera? Well, the answer is just jump on her over and over and over again, and I hesitate to think she got a single kill after starting 2-0. Might have ended 2-7 or whatever it was down the stretch there. So great from Belt Slap to bounce back after a set loss yesterday, something we hadn't seen from them up to this point. And with that, they will go up 1-0 in this best of 3 set. And with that, we'll go back to the desk to break it down.
Definitely not as close as it was the first time these two teams played. I mean, that was a lengthy 3-game set on Friday. Today, seems like Belt Slap did their homework. And Mifflin, it is exactly what you said before we jumped into that game. You said, man, this is kill Hera and win the game. And essentially that's all it was, is the minute Bratz was out of there was nothing that Smileyface could do.
Yeah, it's two-pronged, right? Belt Slap built a comp around being able to chase down that Hera. They didn't have the traditional jungler plus a beads burner sets up a jungler. They had jungler plus a shell burner sets up the jungler. We had Julio just running it down, jumps into that big baby form, burns out 2 shells, and then Johnny jumps in and says, well, okay, they don't have shell left. I guess I just absolutely blow them up. And he's right. And that's a strong composition. Whereas Smileyface, their entire comp is 100% reliant on this Hera. They didn't have the damage output to win an engagement without Bratz. And Bratz dying 7 times means that most of the time they just didn't have Bratz.
I mean, it really did come down to what decision, right? You know, you have these guys, an auto attacker that doesn't care about your shields. He's just going to burst through them if he can. And like you said, Julio goes in right here as a big fight where it happened. Julio makes it out alive after getting both shells, and Johnny's just like, oh, sweet, silver platter team fight, let's go. It's one of the, like, I would say textbook plays that Belt Slap were able to bring into this. Maybe unfortunate for Smileyface having to pop both shells just to stop the Vamana, but it realistically does come down to these two kind of creating the opening. It opened up a lot of damage from Zeros. Arkle didn't necessarily have the biggest game, but towards the last 5 minutes, ton of damage from him. It was pretty much on paper what you wanted.
It was really well played from Belt Slap. Smileyface, I really think they lost in P's and B's. They played the early game well. They had the early rotation. Bratz got off to a very strong start, but the composition just wasn't coherent enough. Had they maybe replaced their support with Kepri, if they had a little bit more CC coming out of their solo laner from Lamogao, had Zalia pick something that could match some damage, deal some equivalent damage to a Bakasura, then we might see a lot more competitive game. Smileyface, I think they just have to go back to the drawing board, draft something up completely new, and run with it in game 2.
Yeah, there were too many goose eggs in the death column there for Belt Slap. Johnny, Zeros, Julio, all undying means that, yeah, you definitely need to change how you're going to approach this. All 17,000 between Johnny and Julio, and then I think it was, 26,000 there I saw at the very end there for Zeros. So a lot of damage, a lot of output, a lot of control, and your shells meant nothing to them. They just ignored you. So it is, like you said, back to the drawing board here in game number 2, because so much is going to be dependent on their approach here. A sustained comp with Hera at the center isn't going to work. Where do you start the change? Do you go back to the sustain, or do you maybe keep Hera and change what's around her?
I think you could do either one. If Bratz is feeling very confident in his Hera, and his damage output was good, he played the abilities well, he was able to position around the fights poorly in the late game, well in the early game. If you are confident in your Hera, build a comp around it that's going to work. If you don't want to go back to the Hera, do anything that you want. If you want to play the sustain game, you can absolutely do it, but you still have to have the other tools. Just because you have healing doesn't mean you don't need damage or CC. You have to have all those tools to make a good puzzle.
Well, they're going to take notes from last game. They immediately ban out Zeros' pick in that Yanis. It's going to be Khepri in retaliation. The biggest thing that always comes through, especially when you're first pick, that I look at in these bans, is how many, I would say maybe non-meta bans are there, right? If Persephone makes it through, if Morrigan makes it through, Heimdall, who's somebody that hasn't really been banned in Europe, but he's available. I mean, we've seen him banned out in North America, but Europe does not seem to care that he exists. And Smileyface are kind of banking on getting some of those power picks for themselves here with the Rom, the Yanis banned away.
Yeah, I think Europe in particular doesn't value the Heimdall because Heimdall's strongest point in the game is the second he turns to level 5. He's got CC immunity, the ultimate, some of the best kill potential in lane, fantastic rotations, and Europe plays a lot more passively. We don't really expect to see more than 2 kills pre 10 minutes, whereas when you compare it to NA, you might have 14 kills between both teams at 10 minutes. So I think that they play more so towards those late game hunters that are going to scale incredibly well, a la Rom or something along those lines, someone who has a really strong steroid. So it doesn't really surprise me that we're not seeing Heimdall focused out too much here, but I think either team would benefit greatly from it, especially Arkle, considering last game how focused he was. Heimdall might be the safest hunter in the game, might be a smart pickup.
Well, show me Aphrodite. No, it's the Sobek of all things. I was so certain that they were going to go for another healer here. But instead, it's going to be the anti-heal tank coming through, and very flexible, as we've mentioned in the past. But Morgan banned out, Persephone banned out. Other than that, the Kumba, the Khepri sticking true for Belt Slap, the Rom, the Yanis forcing Arkle, as well as Zeros to play something different this game. And it's going to be Jingwei that ends up coming through here for Belt Slap. So I guess I have 2 questions for you. 1, is Jingwei going to look good for Arkle, considering how his Rom game went? And 2, was Sobek really worth the first pick?
Sobek first pick means that you're not looking for anything in particular. It's a strong flex pick. There's no true counter matchup for Sobek. He's going to be safe no matter where you stick him. Throw him into solo, he's not going to die. Throw him into support, he probably shouldn't die, but he might also get you some kill pressure. I like the Jingwei pickup for Arkle because Smileyface was immediately looking from minute 1 to pressure him out last game. Jingwei is incredibly safe. You're going to be able to deal with that. I saw your face score. I'll let you get on about this Nox.
I hate it because I look at it and then immediately tell myself that that's a solo lane Nox. Like, I know it's going to be Mogao because no one else plays Nox. It's only Mogao that's going to be able to bring it. So it's going to be interesting how that's going to work out. I mean, we talked about it 2 days ago. She's got a silence. She's got lockdown. If she hits her full kit, you know, it's still Nox. It's still irritating to play against, but I don't know if... Mifflin, what do you think? Is this going to be it? Is this the time? Like, do or die, you're about to get eliminated if you lose this game. Do you really pull out the Nox solo?
Yeah, me personally, no. And if any of my soul laners ask me to lock them Nox, absolutely not, and we might have to revisit contracts at the end of the day, right? But this Nox is especially going to have a hard time against Vamana. What's she going to do? You're going to root a CC immune Goliath baby stomping on your forehead? I don't think so. This Nox is going to need a lot of assistance from the jungler to get off to a good start. Hunbots is going to have to be camping that lane, or Nox should be stuck under a tower for the majority of the match. I don't think that she's got very confirmable CC. Her ultimate is very strong, and it's good for confirming kills from a range, but this god has got very low lows and very mediocre highs for my money.
I would love the curveball that could be Nox all of a sudden going mid, or maybe even something ridiculous like a support to try and deal with Jingwei and Ganesh or something like that. But I guess they're doing some homework here. Bakasura banned out this time instead of the Daji, so Belt Slap maybe having to reach a little further down into their pocket for Johnny. But they get rid of Merlin, they get rid of Uller. A lot of top picks that made it to that second phase of bans, and some that didn't even get banned out. That Aphrodite, I was interested in seeing where she was going to come up. I mean, you want to talk about giving people an extra life. She's going to be able to ult here, I expect, attached to Johnny most of the time, and that's just going to make his life even easier.
And Nox, that single target damage, yeah, Apro's going to kiss whoever you're on, use that ultimate. Now all of a sudden you don't have your silence available, you don't have your root available, you're probably not going to have your life available for much longer after that. I really do like the Bakasura ban from Smileyface, especially considering that Beltslap already locked in the Vamana, who was that fantastic shell burner in the late game. Having that with the Bakasura means that now that the shells are burned, someone can move up and start to make a huge impact because of it. Now that there's not really those huge priority auto attack junglers available anymore, I'll be surprised to see where Johnny goes. He might even lean towards the Erlang Shen if he wants to keep that same strategy going.
What world do we live in that Vulcan has a 100% win rate? It has been picked at all. Yesterday, Bratz, he came in, flexed on people with this Vulcan, and now he's gonna do the exact same thing. At least that's what Smileyface are hoping for here. Daji gets locked up against him. Vulcan, no CC immunity really built into his kit, so he's going to be relying a lot on just, I guess, outright damage to keep himself safe here. What are you looking at? I mean, Smileyface, it's a hodgepodge mix of a draft versus Beltslap's what feels like synergistic picks. Is this where they pull it back? I mean, it is do or die now.
Smileyface has a lot of beads burners, and they've got Fear No Evil, which has synergy in of itself, but Nox and Vulcan completely just easy dive targets. Sobek not really the best peel guardian when you think about him. Sobek, you're thinking, okay, he's going to go for the pluck, then he's going to engage, maybe falls back with a tail whip. Short of that, really no peel for them. I'm worried for Smileyface, man.
Well, let's see if they can do it. They've got some interesting drafts. Let's see how it works out.
Well, remember what happened the last time we questioned Smileyface and what they were picking. The Vulcan blew us and the enemy team away and might do so again here. Alpha Jackal. Now we get a Nox in the solo lane. We get a Vulcan in the mid lane. Are you cautiously worried that there is the potential that Bratz could do well? But how do you feel about the Vulcan?
I'm cautiously worried about the fact that they managed to get a last pick Daji into 3 gods without CC immunity, and the thing we're mentioning right now is there's a Nox in the solo lane and a Vulcan in the mid who have been really good picks for one of the SOC teams. So it's a very interesting time, very interesting situation for us here. And the Vulcan, once again, won't have the best Divine Rune application, but may like to go into it this time, given that there's no Jormungandr in the solo lane.
That's right, and that was one of the early worries we had with Bratz in this Vulcan. When we saw him the first time, is you can't really fully apply that Divine Ruin. E-Chrome is going to get aggressive here. Arkle has to get the shell burnt by his support there to keep them both alive. Rotation over onto Zero. Zalia has found first blood a minute and a half into this game, and already the mid laner and the jungler have struck for Smileyface.
Don't question Brot's Vulcan. That is
it's our fault.
That's top of the list. You cannot question it anymore. It's literally he picks Vulcan. Okay, I guess it's a good pick, no matter what.
And it seems that way. And right now, Arkle with no shell in his lane is going to be under attack from Silence and E-Chrome. Won't result in much there. Still a beads for Arkle. So even if you're forced back, the Jingwei plenty safe and plenty quick to get back to lane. But let's talk a little bit about what happened there. I mean, it is just a rotation over to the red buff by Beltslap. And there was enough burst damage early on, I suppose, from a Hunbats and a Vulcan to delete a mid laner.
Yeah, the turret did a fair bit more damage than you would have thought at that point, but the backfire came out at the perfect time, just as the shot was being fired, meaning that it got that extra bit of damage onto the Aphrodite, thanks to the mark coming out from hitting that backfire. It does more than you think.
It does put Zeros a little bit behind here, 1 level, as a matter of fact, to Bratz. But it's an interesting pick, I think, for Zeros. Obviously, Aphrodite can do a good bit of damage to get back, depending on who you're linked with there. We'll chunk some down the Lovebirds as well. But it's more of a facilitator pick, potentially, in this Aphrodite. You link up with Julio, maybe, in some of these big team fights. The Undying Love will keep this Vamana alive a little bit longer. The synergy, maybe, from Zeros is really what Beltslap are going to be looking for in these team fights.
And he could fall onto the same trap that Brox fell into last game, where he was the sole focus of the enemy team.
Right.
Gets up to a decent start, and then just gets collapsed on every single fight from there on in. And the one thing I'm worried about this Aphrodite is the fact that you have that Daji in that jungle. You want something big to follow up with from that ultimate. Trix Tank is the first person to be followed up on. Xaylia with the kill. Johnny forced to use his beats early, and it could be looking like he's getting out there.
This is what we've seen from Smileyface in the games. They win. Trix Tank goes down. Shell, now 3 seconds from being back up. May not have saved his life there, but notable that the Shell burnt early in that lane ends up biting them.
Oh.
Now Bratz has found a kill over onto Zeros elsewhere on the map. We talk about that ult being, I don't want to say easy to dodge, but one of the easier maybe ults to dodge. Zeros dies with his ultimate up, and now the mid laner for Smileyface has a kill and an assist under his belt.
I will give credit to Zeros, though, the fact that he literally only just hit level 5, didn't have a chance to level up his ultimate before he died, so we can forgive him having his ult up this time, but provided that in the future, in these fights, it's not a repeat of yesterday, where his ultimate was up and still gets hit by Vulcan ults, then that's a different story.
I think you have to be thrilled if you're Smileyface with the way this Hunbats has looked. What are we, 4 minutes into this game? Already rotated over for first blood, helped with a kill over onto the long lane of Belt Slap. This is where the snowball out of control can potentially start. You put Johnny on something a little bit different in the Daji, not one of those big chainsaw auto attack late game hyper carry type junglers. But if you can continue to force this issue, you get all of Belt Slap behind enough. It might not matter. So I think Xaylia off to a 2-0 start here. Perfect for Smileyface.
Yeah, it's only 4.5 minutes into the game, 2,000 gold up, thereabouts.
Right.
It's a really good start for Smileyface. This is one of the fastest snowballs you will see in Season 7, especially up against a team like Belt Slap, who predominantly don't get snowballed on. Bratz manages to take both of those Harpies away thanks to that backfire. He is really fed right now, and this is where Smileyface need to group up and just play around Bratz, play around Xaylia. The two of them should be linked together. So almost like the Aphrodite should be linked to Johnny at this point.
Right. Oh, might be able to return to that thought as Silenced has rotated down to the long lane. Trix Tank plucked aside once more. Dharmic Pillars are available this time. That's an early shell. And Trix has to dash away from the Sunbreaker. Up, down goes Xaylia here. Does not have the Fear No Evil, so Arkle and Trix Tank will both walk away alive. Plenty of damage, though, returned over onto Smileyface. Johnny is here as well. That'll provoke Trix Tank and Arkle both to hang around. Beads galore for Smileyface outside of the blink for Silenced. All of them available, so it'd be tough for Johnny to fully find a kill here. But good to take maybe a tally of where the level differential stands. Soul Lane hasn't seen much action. Johnny, I think, all things considered, has done a good job of farming his way to be level 6 right alongside his counterpart that already has 2 kills. Mid lane is the biggest gap here, with Zeros falling slightly behind. Johnny getting aggressive onto Bratz, slightly low on mana, but the ultimate will save him from most of the damage. No chains connect here. Fear No Evil down underneath the tier 1 tower, and Silence has found the kill down onto Zeros. Pluck puts Johnny back into the fray, and Trix Tank is going to move his way beneath the tier 1 tower as well. Ikrom has joined the fight, finds some good auto attack, but it's Zeros for the 3rd time this game taking a tumble.
Yeah, just abandoned by the rest of his team. Johnny looking aggressive, and Bratz wants to kill this Vulcan, but Bratz manages to dodge all 3 of the chains coming out from Johnny. It doesn't mean his beads are still intact. He doesn't have to worry about the next ultimate as well. And you have to worry for Belt Slap because the bead forceage on their side is quite weak outside of the Powl out from Daji. Yes, you have the Silence coming out for Trix Tank and his knock-up, but it really is too much to hone about. It's not that long-range instant CC burst that Johnny can then immediately capitalize on.
That's a great point. You know, normally you look at these teams built around a Daji and you're saying, all right, who can burn beads? So the Powwows will pull somebody back in. And now it's just the Powwow burning the beads. Granted, the ultimate cooldown is a little bit lower. Johnny might have gotten sensed out by Lamo Gao there. So certainly something to keep our eyes on. All 4 beads have been up effectively this entire game for Smileyface, who now find themselves 3,000 gold in the lead over Belt Slap. Certainly not a team you can count out in Belt Slap. They have, been in these types of situations before. But does the late game scaling of Belt Slap give you enough hope that a 3K gold differential is no worry to them?
I think with the fact that Smileyface have recognized the fact that they didn't counter-build last game and have immediately gone into Brawler's Beatstick, Divine Ruin, immediately rushing to Devour's Gold from Ekron because it doesn't need to rotate that much, I think it spells a lot more trouble for Belt Slap than it would be had this 3,000 gold lead been in the last game.
Uh-oh, Trix Tank is going to move forward onto Brotz. Yep, finally one set of beads burnt, and it's Brotz this time, but Trix Tank immediately has to retreat beneath his own tower. Johnny hanging over around just to the side. Might get sensed out here by Smileyface. The collapse isn't quite there as the oracles were being looked at by the rest of Smileyface here. Rotation down to the mid lane, but won't really result in anything. Now you start to, speaking of rotations, we haven't really gotten a chance to talk about this Nox in the solo lane just yet. I mean, still something that maybe we want to see proven to us. The relative impact in some of these fights of a Vamana versus a Nox may be enough to give Belt Slap an edge.
Oh, Azelia's caught in a bad spot. He's not got his, he's not got a somersault, but Brotz eliminates Trix Tank to get rid of one issue. Zelia comes out as a death in trade, but 1-for-1 Belt Slap finally on the board there.
Yeah, finally getting something going for themselves, but unfortunately have to trade out Trix Tank once more. I suppose if you're talking about best case scenario, it's losing your support in exchange for finally a kill getting on board, especially if it's Arkle here, trying to catch up a little bit on this Jing Wei. But kind of back to that point, just prior to that little skirmish, I mean, you talk about a Vamana rotating into a fight, a Nox rotating in as well. It was kind of a lopsided matchup in the mind of the desk. Do you think that could be a big pivot point in this match where Belt Slap can maybe find themselves an edge?
I think it comes down to how effective Mogau's silences can be. Does he use the silence to stop Johnny tearing through Brotz? Does he use the silence to stop Arkle from getting up into the air thanks to that airstrike? What Mogau silences and how he silences them and how he routes them there to take some extra damage from the Vulcan is going to play a pivotal part in the rotation power coming out from Julio and Mogau together.
It's going to be tough to lock down Brotz as well, kind of regardless of relative power there. Purple buff invade looks like gone correct. We'll see if Arkle picks it up. No, so purple buff dropped here by Smileyface. But it is looking like the Doomorb build again from Brotz here. Goes Divine Ruin first overall. Remember, we were kind of surprised the first time we saw the Vulcan with just how slippery he was, how hard he was to lock down. Doesn't quite have the same threat of those auto-attack hyper-carry junglers just sitting on him. We've already seen what Brotz can do with a little bit of move speed, dodge out some of those dodge E-chains quite well. So this Vulcan continues to surprise and might be doubly hard to lock down with a little extra move speed.
Yeah, once you finish the Doom, it's going to be curtains for them. Speaking of curtains, Pyromancer once existed on the map. That was very quick without a Hunter.
Yeah, and now you start to look towards...
quick.
Yeah, that was just a couple of minutes, or a couple of seconds, rather, where Smileyface found themselves an opening, and I suppose that's what having now a 4K gold lead will afford you in a game like this. Brotz certainly has that melt potential. Good highlight there from Doug, and it's something Aggro mentioned yesterday when looking at this Vulcan. The Cannon Max will add just so much extra chunk damage to a lot of these fights, especially now that the Gold Fury has been oracled up. Smileyface looking to move themselves to this left side of the map, surprising maybe that Pyro's the first real respawning objective locked down. But with a little bit, I won't call it deep, but you got some ward coverage on the backside of that Fury pit. Smileyface might start to pivot themselves towards this big objective.
Yeah, they don't have to worry about Belt Slap going over and sneaking the Pyromancer away if things go south for them. So they've given themselves another opportunity to extend their lead without repercussion should they, fall a tiny bit further down than they would like in these fights. Right. And to go back to the Vulcan point, Vulcan is probably the only god in the game where you could max any one of his abilities first and make a justification for it. Arkle gets the purple buff stolen from him from Silence. Not sure that's one of the uses of Blink I would like to see, but, I'll give him props for that.
Hey, we're just going to try to keep Arkle down here at this point. Only one on Belt Slap with a kill, and 3 levels behind is where Zero stands if we're kind of talking about relative downness, I suppose, to their counterparts. It is a completed Doom Orb and Divine Ruin for Brotst, whereas Boots is the only completed item for Zeros up to this point, who is 3 levels down, looking towards that Doom Orb potentially as well. But if you're kind of looking at Belt Slap and what they have built here, maybe if Zeros is able to find a good Undying Love, won't quite matter. Will be helpful. Azalea gets caught out. Great Fear No Evil will force the ultimate out of Johnny, and the ultimate from Brotst will slam down. Maybe it was the turret on the back end around the wall that found the final shot. Either way, Johnny falls, and Brotst has found himself the 3rd kill.
I must admit, the turret projectile was fired. Johnny goes up, and it's still waiting for him on the ground. It's sort of like, you know, when you go up in the air from a World Weaver. Must be the exact same scenario, but either way, Johnny dies. Here comes the Gold Fury attempt from Smileyface, and without their huge engage potential from Dharmic Pillars, without Johnny alive, I don't think there's an opportunity for Beltslap to contest this.
Oh, Trix Tank absolutely deleted off the map. Johnny has come back and respawned, but will be rejoining this fight a little bit later on. Zero's providing a little bit of a parachute there for Julio to take, as the Colossal Fury will time out. Smileyface now pulling out this Gold Fury fully. Will be a big swing here in this match. Currently stand at a 4,500 gold lead. Call it about 5,500 now for Smileyface. So a couple of kills. It looks like Zalia is going to get caught out there just for a moment. The Hunbats is able to escape, and Belt Slap lose a member in the meantime. It is an uphill battle, to say the least, for Belt Slap. Smileyface continue to impress us with these unconventional picks.
I don't think that can be called unconventional at this point. If I'm if I'm on a team that's in the SCC now, I'm thinking, okay, let's try practicing some Vulcan. Maybe not the Nox. maybe that's just a bit more of his signature pick. That's a bit too out there. But the Vulcan's been, you know, impressive time and time again. It's worked out in 2 games so far, so it's something certainly to look into if you're on a high-level team.
And you look at the player damage charts, little opposites for the mid laners. Brotst at 8,500, and Zeros all the way at the bottom at 688. I knew he said 6,000, but he is not even in the quad digits just yet. Granted, the mindset of Smileyface has been much the same as what Belt Slap were doing in Game 1. It's dive on Zeros repeatedly. Trix Tank has met a similar fate here. But maybe back to a point I was thinking, and obviously you want this Aphrodite to provide some good damage in a lot of these fights. Certainly not something she shies away from. But that utility is going to be big as well. If Belt Slap need a life raft back into this game, an Undying Love with a little extra healing, maybe regardless of how far behind Zeros is, could help in swinging some small engagements.
It could do, but on the opposite side of that, you have that parachute, you have that utility, you don't have as much burst coming out from people being pulled in by the parallel, people being, you know, trapped inside the Dharmic Pillars. You know, Julio has his work cut out here to try and, you know, give his team a lifeline back into this game, because he is the one that can rotate and make effective changes for the side of Belt Slap. He could dive onto Echrome, could dive onto Brotz and force him a bit further away, because they don't have the tools to deal with the Vamana as fully as they would like, thanks to the fact his Colossal Fury CC immunity just lets him run through the Sunbreaker ultimate, allows him to run through what Brotz wants to do.
Certainly an option there for Belt Slap, but uphill battle again seems like a bit of an understatement. 0-3 on Zeros, 0-3 on Trix Tank as well. Smileyface are starting to get to that point of confidence where they're just going to keep poking their head around a lot of these corners, looking for small engagements that might work for them, and for good reason. You've got a 4-0-2 mid laner. More recently, it's the pluck on the Trix Tank, followed up by the ultimate from Silence. Big old rockets will drop down. Brotz won't find the kill there. Arkle has found a fight down in the long lane, and Johnny there on the gank to help him out. Finally, the jungler for Belt Slap is able to swing. A couple small engagements. Belt Slap, a big win there for them.
Yeah, huge win for Belt Slap. Gets himself, you know, something going in one of the lanes. Arkle might be able to catch up and, you know, maybe even overtake Echrome with a wave to himself. But that was just on Smileyface, looking at Trix Tank, looking at, you know, maybe trying to take an objective. Maybe a bit too hesitant, I would say, looking to maybe pick up somebody before they went onto the objective, and that's cost them the opportunity to go for it.
And we have been talking about how Julio could be the route back into the game for Belt Slap. And last game, we were maybe a little curious. No Cursed Onyx picked up for Smileyface against this Vamana. This game silenced early has elected to go into that Cursed Ankh. Not early, I suppose level 12 was his only option, but realizing that Julio is going to be the big threat here, it is Cursed Ankh picked up by Silence, so a large portion of what Beltslap are looking to do gets mitigated there. Shell as well provides a little extra value for Beltslap on the opposite side. And you start to look towards Trix Tank as well, who's had a rough game up to this point. Lots of dives trending towards him. But sometimes, Alpha Jackal, all it takes is one big Dharmic Pillars to kind of corral the enemy team, and you can find some damage there.
This is basically just the same thing as one big Scylla ult can change the entire course of a game. One big, one big Discordia apple can change the entire game. One Dharmic Pillars is all it takes to change the course of a game. But he's finally got his Gauntlet of Thieves stacked up, catching up to Ice Silence in terms of build, one tier away from what I imagine is going to be a Spirit's Robe here rather than a Mantle of Discord. Just to give himself some extra damage mitigation when he does get CC'd by Mogao, does get CC'd by Brot, from Zayla, or pretty much anybody from Smileyface hits him with ability. It's going to proc that 10% damage mitigation.
And it is another Pyromancer locked in here. We figured Arco might be a little bit more comfortable in that lane after receiving some jungle presence from Johnny, but that is not the case. Has leveled up equally, both level 17, but Ikrom still winning those small trades. The Sunbreaker has to get traded out, Airstrike not by Arkle. Could be an opening then for Beltslap to maybe move around this Fury. Oni Fury now has just respawned. Smileyface 1 for 1 so far here on the Fury side of things. It's an interesting position though. Beltslap is not a team that shies away from a lot. You can see how tense they were with a 5,000 gold lead starting up these Furies. You wonder how comfortable they might be taking a small skirmish here around 120 minutes in.
Yeah, they're going to be 5,000 gold down this time, would be Beltslap,
Right.
and it's difficult for them to look for the engagement, because the last time they did, Trix Tank got melted and erased. Johnny died as he came down from his powwow, and Zeros was a bit of a non-factor in those things, because the damage output was just too great for him to overheal. And now that they have 100% anti-heal on the side of Smileyface, you need to start to shift from an Aphrodite being there for utility and being there for damage, because otherwise you're just going to do nothing.
Great point. That's what I figured might be Zero's route back into this game, was the more support-centric utility mindset, but won't be with a lot of that anti-heal coming online. Beltslap actually showing some decent face here around this Oni Fury. Smileyface started it up a couple of times, but have backed off in equal number. Johnny close here in the mid lane. Brotz is going to be able to keep himself alive. The first player in this game nearly level 20. Zero's lagging just 3 levels behind. So it is Beltslap playing somewhat closely to this Oni Fury, maybe not surprising. Just for a moment there, Ikrom did not have his ultimate, so it could have been a moment where Beltslap find a small advantage, but it is the pluck back onto Trix Tank to maybe get things started here. Stunned down, but his beads now Dharmic Pillars that has to get this Ganesh out to safety, and as such, Smileyface will respond with the started up Fury.
I think this is going to be down before Beltslap can even contest it. Yet there it goes. Johnny might look for the engage here onto Silence, but that Nox ultimate is just going to tear through Beltslap, making sure they do less damage, and that's going to cause an end for that engagement. Smileyface with a beautiful play, and something which has only just been highlighted in that fight was the fact that Trix Tank was forced to pick up the beads as his second relic, rather than something a bit more team-oriented, like a sprint or a Cursed Ankh or a horrific emblem. Sure. Just something to, allow his team a bit more maneuverability and a bit more, presence in those fights. He has to opt for that personal safety just so he doesn't get blown up and become target number 1.
This is maybe the worst situation we've seen Beltslap in here this weekend. Of course, losing yesterday in a couple of quick games, but Smileyface now 7,000 gold in the lead, 21 minutes in. The big Oni Fury waves starting to get melted through, so Beltslap not too pushed back by a lot of what that Fury provided, but the gold still absolutely important. Kind of a check back in on the mid lane builds, because somewhat similar, I suppose. Doomorb and Deso completed for Zeros, and one full item ahead. I believe it's 3,000 is the net worth differential, so you talk about a 7,000 gold lead here for Smileyface. 3,000 of that is over in that mid lane, 13,207 for Brotz to be specific, and then 10,000 down near the bottom for Zeros. So that is about a full completed item behind. A 1,000 gold lead, half an item still can outplay in a team fight. We're talking about the difference now between 2 items. So a Soul Reaver and a little extra damage on top of it. This Vulcans need to be looked at by Belt Slap early and often here. Johnny might be the one to do so, but now he's found E-Chrome over here in the long lane. Sunbreaker down onto Arkle, but it's the airstrike that deletes the Smileyface Hunter, and Belt Slap find another kill yet again in the long lane.
And that's the point where Brotz is going to get caught out here by Tricks like Solid Pillars. Around the back is Julio. This could be the kill they've been looking for this entire time, but all the defensive options have been used. Julio's forced to go into his Colossal Fury. I'm sorry, how much damage was that backfire onto a full tank Julio? Out comes the Night Terror looking for Julio, and they do pick him up. Another great backfire from Brotz. This man is insane.
That's from range from Lamogao as well to chip down some of that massive health bar. Could have looked bad for Smileyface there. And I think Belt Slap have been doing a good job of... There's no way we win in a 5v5 fight because of how strong Smileyface are. Let's try to pick them off one by one. Again, E-Chrome goes down. 2 out of the 3 deaths for Smileyface are on E-Chrome. The ganks have been there from Johnny. Arkle benefits for it, so a small advantage there maybe for Belt Slap. You think you found Brotz all on his own, but that's not to be. The mobility and return damage just too much out of that mid lane. We'll take a quick pause before jumping back in here. As great as Smileyface have looked, is there any worry over the horizon that Belt Slap are starting to whittle down that lead?
The worry for Smileyface has to be the fact that they aren't ending the game as quickly as they would like. If you look at, there's still all 6 towers available. If you're at this point in the game as a team in the lead and has been in the lead the entire game, you want to have taken down all the tier 1 towers and maybe 1 or 2 tier 2s to expose a Phoenix. Just so when you do get this first Fire Giant, you can immediately try and break the base. Brotz is going to be broken here, though. This is going to be his first death. Finally shut down this mid laner. That's a huge gold bounty and a huge swing there for Johnny.
And that's the exact combination we expect to see. Zero's linked up with Johnny, and then the dive onto Brotz, too. Remember, was fought a little bit earlier, was able to stay alive, but never ended up going back to base to fully heal himself and get himself healthy enough to be back into the fight. Literally the opposite, maybe, of what we've expected here now, Alpha Jackal. You're just now talking about how you got yourself 6,000 gold in the lead, but haven't broken any of the map of Belt Slap. Quite the opposite. You've now lost all 3 of your tier 1 towers if you're Smileyface. Maybe you need to force a fight around this FG to buy yourself some map pressure.
I think at this point you just have to wait for Brotz to come back up alive and then stay around him. The fact of the matter is, both the engagements that have happened onto him recently have been because he has been isolated. He's been alone looking for farm by himself. Right. He's already level 20, already has 5 items online, just needs to sell his starter item for another one, and then maybe look at selling his boots in a bit. But he doesn't need to get this accelerated farm anymore. He doesn't need to be by himself. He needs to be protected. Mogao, Zalia, and Silenced, one of those 3 needs to be around him all the time.
And Zeros now picks up the Soul Reaver as well, and I put so much focus on that just because of how far behind Zeros has been this game. So it is really the 1 full item. Had a lot of gold in hand prior, so it was never really the full 2, at least gold-wise. Just the 1. Smileyface moving themselves over towards this Fire Giant side of the map, but Belt Slap in turn are going to respond with the Fury started up. If you trade out Trix Tank here, maybe a worthwhile investment. It is going to be Brotz picking up the long-range shot, but the Fury does go down here for Belt Slap. Support for a Fury, how you feeling?
I'm not feeling too great about Smileyface, especially if Chrome's going to get blown up like he could be here. Looks like it's going to be the good peel. This pillar is going to be massive here from Johnny, and it is. E-Chrome's the first one to fall, and this could be disastrous for Smileyface as Belt Slap find themselves in a good position for a fight. 5,000
gold lead, who says Belt Slap as they continue to run down Smileyface here. Lamogao is going to root down 1, but the tier 2 tower is going to provide enough safety for Belt Slap to have to disengage. Brotz stays alive here, picks up 1 kill in this lengthy engagement, but it is Belt Slap, Alpha Jackal, who continue to look like the more productive team, I suppose, the more preemptive team, the ones making some change on this map, despite the way the gold lead might look.
At this point, I don't think you can really consider them behind in gold, because the way they're taking these fights and the way their characters scale into this late game, it's almost as if it is a completely even game at this point. 4,000 gold, 27 minutes into the game, not so strong as 4,000 gold, 8 minutes into the game. But Fire Giant looks like it might be started up here by Smileyface. They're certainly in position for it, but they don't recognize that Belt Slap has split across the map.
That's right, it is Arkle over in that long lane. 2 waves will soon be crashing into that Tier 1 tower. That still stands, just an update on that. None of the base has been broken for Belt Slap just yet. A renewed sense of confidence, maybe, for the #1 seed coming out of the SCC, despite losing yesterday. Julio has obviously played a big role here. But just how important has Johnny been here in this game after a rough start for Belt Slap? The continued ganks to the long lane and now a big fight, constantly finding this backline has been pivotal for Belt Slap to get back into this game.
Johnny has started the revival here for Belt Slap, but you have to look at Julio's position and Julio's pressure in these team fights has been absolutely insane. He has died once, but that was at the midpoint of the game rather than this later stage where he is really difficult to deal with. And now Belt Slap feel confident enough to take on this Fire Giant. This could be a burn before the rotation comes in from Smileyface, but they have to be worried about the Vulcan ultimate.
Yeah, it is a team in Belt Slap that are constantly kind of starting these big objectives and then waiting to see a Smileyface move in and then tend to pull off. So at least respecting that there's still a massive amount of damage coming from Brotst. It is the Souled Blessing, now picked up for Rod of Tahuti. So how many times have we seen, these half-health guys from Belt Slap somehow limping away from these engagements? Brotst says no more. Will pick up one final big, damaging power spike for himself here in this game. Beads and Aegis, both still available, so as much as we've talked about Belt Slap getting back into this game and maybe being in the driver's seat, still a big chance for Smileyface to keep themselves in these fights with some of the actives they have available.
Magic Blessing is there for Suns. Plucked in Trix Tank yet again, but is Trix Tank really the focus you should be going on to in these fights? They invest so much onto the Elephant that he's still alive here. He gets out, Vulcan Ultimate is going to hit no one. Arkle gets up by the skin of his teeth. But it was their downfall in the last fight that they focused on Trinks and they picked him up. And they don't manage to kill him this time. And look at that, all 5 ultimates down on Smileyface.
Yep. All 5 ultimates used, and I'd argue 4 of them all used for Trix Tank. That means Belt Slap might have the advantage here in this fight. Beads used by Brotst as he'll move his way out of this fight as well. Trix Tank ever so low, but still hanging just close by. So, maybe you have to consider that a win if you're Smileyface, that you use almost everything to try to lock down Trix Tank, and Belt Slap aren't able to punish you for it just yet.
The engagement was very split there from Belt Slap. They looked to try and isolate Brotz yet again. Unfortunately, he has beats, so he's able to get away from the parallel from Johnny. And then Julio by himself against 4. Force used Colossal Fury defensively to get away from this potential CC chain. Just play that retreat well, but they had to use some relics in order to get away to safety.
It's true, and now it's no beads for Brotz, as Enhanced Fire Giant will spring from the earth. Both teams looking towards it. This is a big one for Smileyface. You've made a great showing here in this tournament. You don't want to go out. Not like this, when you've built yourself a fantastic lead here in this game, but Belt Slap have moved it down effectively to nothing. Still a 5k gold lead, a lot of that in the mid lane. Still Zero's looking to catch up. Trix Tank there as well. Finally, a Tier 1 tower will go down. 30 minutes into the game, Smileyface have knocked down the Tier 1 tower over in the solo lane.
First structure of the game to go down from Belt Slap. They are going to be not so happy about that. That cuts off one of their defensive retreat options. But they can still rest happy in the fact that their mid-tier 1 is available to retreat to should the worst happens. But Mogal, once again, going into that late Gauntlet of Thebes. 20 stacks on it already. Looking to try and get that finished up before then this next big engagement. Just means that they can stay around Mogal, they can stay around Silence to get the auras that they need to help being protected.
I'm curious, and hopefully we have a moment to talk about it before a big fight, but we've kind of talked a lot about how Smileyface haven't broken the map at all. We might not actually get a moment to talk about that, as Julio taken down to half HP. Colossal Fury and Dharmic Pillars both used here, but a return ultimate from Brotst will swing its way through. 2 for 2 on the ultimate trade. Big damaging ones from Smileyface and big team fight ones from Belt Slap, both off the board.
Oh, I think that's a bit more of a win, though, for Smileyface, given that if Julio can't engage anymore, he has to stay a bit further back. He has his thorns available to him, sure, but if he gets plucked, he's just basically dead. And speaking of dead, Chrome, it will be when he lands.
Watch out, Chrome has to use the beads, but Johnny is just a little bit quicker. Egg is timed out there as well. Belt Slap, now the aggressors here in this fight, half HP as always on a couple members of Belt Slap, and one and done is all we've got here for that small engagement. Maybe a Fire Giant, as Zeros is going to start to heal up his solo laner just a little bit, but another small pick. It's been E-Chrome that's been under the eye of Johnny time and time and time again here this game. Now 4 out of the 6 deaths on the Smileyface Hunter.
He's just not as mobile, he's not as difficult to lock down as Brotz is on his Vulcan with his Doom Orb and his passive available to him. So it's a lot easier for them to pick off E-Chrome. If I was him, I would maybe consider starting to upgrade his relics rather than finish up an item in exchange for the boots, just so he has that, well, those relics on a 30-second shorter cooldown.
Well, it is Belt Slap who start up, peel off, and now look to re-engage on this fight. Brotz drops down the rockets to try to slow down the Belt Slap engagement. Julio has his ultimate back available as well, and another fight will start up and fizzle out with no deaths here. But maybe you've bought yourself enough time if you're Belt Slap to start up the fire.
Yeah, they force everyone but Silence to back. Silence, it doesn't have lurking in the waters available to him, might be up in just a few seconds, but they don't want to even risk the Croc stealing this, so they're looking to try and engage onto him and kill him before it happens. They force that lurking in the waters, but that allows the rest of Smileyface to get back into the Fire Giant defense. I'm not so sure that was a correct decision by Belt Slap.
I agree. I mean, it seems like you have a moment there. I mean, we've seen these miracle kind of one-off Fire Giant steals, and with how close this game is, a little swing there from Silenced could be a big swing in the game if the enhanced Fire Giant goes down for Smileyface. So cautious, but maybe realizing that it's not worth a potential throw. Our Belt Slap, but again, it's a trend we've seen from this team where they'll start up one of these objectives, look for a fight, fully peel off all at once, obviously clear lines of communication, but won't end up returning back for it. Kind of to return to a point, maybe quick thoughts. We've talked a lot about how Smileyface haven't had a lot of this map pressure despite having this big lead. Is there anything that's kind of stood out to you as why that might be? I mean, obviously a lot of fight-centric mentality from Smileyface. Maybe they're just left too low at the end of it to fully buy themselves time to knock down the towers of Belt Slap.
I think they were just a bit too hesitant on going into these fights, because if they go into the fights and are forced to use the relics themselves without Johnny being around, then they know their target, you know, they know they have a target on their back for Johnny to come in and get those kills in just like a few more seconds. So they had to play quite reactively to the engagements, had to play aggressive on the farm when they could before level 5, before Johnny hit that level 5 mark. And that's you know, honestly, that's a fine game plan if they were looking at playing this map the way that they did. And right now, just look at Silence, look at the gauge onto Zeros, forces out that Undying Love early, but on a nice cooldown, Johnny teleports into a Silence field, gets out because Mogo is unable to hit that route.
We'll get the bubbles now for Smileyface. 3 waiting to get popped, so plenty of CC. You've got 4 out of 5 members on your team with beads. Now you've got 3 bubbles that'll knock off some of that CC. The game plan is clear defensively, I suppose, from Smileyface here, but unfortunately these big respawning objectives have all gone the way of Belt Slap here as of late. The Oni minions just now crashing into the long and short lanes, already cleared out in the mid lane. Could be enough to buy some time maybe for Belt Slap to look for a fight here, but Belt Slap have to be aware now of some of the item builds for Smileyface and look to burst some of those bubbles maybe before a big team fight.
They could do, and if I'm Belt Slap, I'm waiting for 1 minute. At about that 1 minute mark, this is when Smileyface have to make that decision about wanting to defend the left-hand side, defend Brotz, or defend the Fire Giant. And it looks like Brotz is going to be the one that's sacrificed. The bleed is too strong.
It sure is, and that is all Johnny all day. He gets onto Brotz. Brotz uses both of his actives, and nothing can be said of it. That's the target that Belt Slap looked for, is the Fire Giant now being taken down, and it is Belt Slap who secure it. Silenced was in range, but likely will trade out his life in tow. 45 seconds on Brotz, a full minute on Silenced, and Belt Slap 5 members strong with enhanced Fire Giant.
And they played that perfectly. The second that they saw Azalea over on that left-hand side, the second that they saw Brotz was out of position, they went in and took him down, took out the one big steal potential that they were worried about, and immediately went back to the Fire Giant. No mistakes this time about wanting to kill the Croc before taking the objective. Bird goes down in mid lane. Well, Bird goes down in solo lane, sorry. Mid lane could be next, but there's towers available. They could just look for the end here.
They just want to end this game, and for good reason. Belt Slap have found themselves an opening. 3 members of Smileyface fighting for their life in this tournament, but I don't think it'll be enough here. Julio does get swung away. Echrome finds a kill here. Down goes Arkle as well. Johnny is going to sidestep the arrow, but it won't be enough. It's a double kill from the Hunter on the defense. Dharmic Pillars will complete the retreat here from Trix Tank. The chase still on, but this game lives.
The game lives, and you have to credit Mogao and Echrome for managing to hold there in the most unlikely circumstances. Zelia was there with a bit of help as well, thanks to that Fear No Evil. And maybe the fact that Zelia wasn't a part of that last fight saves him there. He doesn't have to use the Fear No Evil to have it disengage before the Fire Giant has it available to them to defend the Titan. Tier 1 tower in mid's going to fall down. Tier 2 likely to fall as well. And with the respawn time, you might even say a Phoenix.
Could be here. This is exactly what Smileyface needed to maybe finally get some base pressure over onto Beltslap, who had resurged back into this game despite a 7,000-ish gold differential. 10 to 15 seconds on the Beltslap respawns, but that'll likely be it here for this Smileyface offense. Still a couple members of Beltslap with that enhanced Fire Giant. And Alpha Jackal, you look at how low that Titan is, granted some tier 2 towers and both mid and long lane Phoenix still up. One concerted effort could knock down this Titan if Beltslap find enough damage onto it.
I believe if they grouped up as a 5-man and just ran into the base, they could potentially look to end. But they have to be wary of Brost once again, because his Vulcan Ultimate will just obliterate Arkle. And it may be worth Zero switching to keep Arkle on Link instead of on Johnny, because Johnny can get up into the sky to avoid that ultimate. Arkle Airstrike would take a bit too long to get off. Just that Snap Undying Love would keep him alive, and at that point it would be game over.
It's all about whether or not Johnny can really find Brost on the backline. We've seen one opening, and regardless of your actives, Brost will get taken down by this full build Daji. Now rounds out the build with a hi-rez Lament, so some extra damage there for the Beltslap jungler. Collapse. Beltslap corralling Smileyface into the Dharmic Pillars. Echrome goes up. He'll land down. It's Brost who's under the eye of Julio here, and who else would it be? Echrome, though, goes down to Johnny. Arkle deletes Brost off the map. This could be the fight that wins Beltslap the game, but can you get any more? Zelia will have to blink his way away. Lamogao slightly tanky. Good 4-man silence here as Beltslap find themselves between a bit of a rock and a hard place. But Beltslap, 5 members strong, are going to roll their way into the Titan room. Julio swinging away on the low health Titan. It looks like Smileyface's days are numbered, and Beltslap are going to move their way to the finals.
Beltslap, they were angry at the fact that they went down to this lower bracket, and they're going to come straight back up and face the people that dumped them into this situation in the first place. They find themselves with a date with Destiny with the Pappies, but they're already going down a game down into that set. Don't forget, it's best of 5, and Pappies with that upper bracket advantage with that 1-0.
That's right, they got the 1-game advantage, the Poppies do. So maybe a different look, a longer drawn-out set, and what was a long best of 3 yesterday could potentially go the full distance here between these two teams. Beltslap, that's got to show some resolve, even if it is the SOC team, to come back from a big deficit like that. Hats off to Smileyface. I think they showed us some great stuff here this weekend. Knocked out the Cold Llamas, which certainly can't be understated, and made a great showing here in Game 2 against Beltslap. But with that being said, Beltslap will complete the 2-0. They will move on to the Grand Finals, which will be right after the desk breaks down the previous game.
Well, all I realistically learned out of that one, Dave, is that I just can't say anything mean about Brost's Vulcan. It is solid, it's going to work, and Mifflin, it looked really good in spite of losing. Unfortunately, it is still a loss, and I think a lot of it comes down to something that we touched on at the very tail end of picks and bans, and a lot of my vision pressure goes towards that Daji, a nice big like CC ultimate against a lot of people that don't have CC immunity in their kits.
And truthfully, it was only the Daji that had consistent beads burning potential, but it just works out because of all the threats that they brought with their team comp.
Yeah.
But Smileyface not being able to close out that game, I think at round 13 minutes they were 5,000 or 6,000 gold up. They just didn't put enough pressure on the map. They could have moved towards the Pyromancer, Fire Giant. They really had to keep it up because they knew they were on a timer playing against Zeros' Aphrodite. I mean, that's rough. You know, the second that goes to 35 minutes, my money's always going to be on Beltslap in that scenario. But Smileyface in the early game, I really thought that we were going to a game 3.
Yeah, I mean, they were running the show. It was at the point where we're sitting there like, okay, cool. Like 30 minutes, we're probably going to need to be chilling, get back to the desk, prep for game 3. What do Belt Slap need to change? And then Belt Slap just started changing in game instead of having to wait and go an extra mile and try to change picks and bans around. They just did it while they had the opportunity. I think shutting down Echrome a lot in these highlights. You see them getting a lot of good focus. Specifically onto the Hunter, almost makes you feel bad for the Hu Yi. How many times I've seen Johnny just taking him down. Unfortunately, Bratz can have the best game of his life. It doesn't matter if everybody else is getting pulled down.
Hey, well, Echrome had it coming to him after what happened to Arkil in Game 1. They just had to pay it back in spades to the long lane. But you're right. Bratz absolutely performed amazingly this game. He was finding all the ultimates that he needed to, were just hitting home. His backfires were clean, his turrets were in the right spots. But that's just a shortcoming of these off-meta picks, is that come late game, once it's a 5-on-5 engagement, Nox Vulcan together, it's just not really going to work out. There wasn't much synergy there. And every time they were able to find these one picks in the jungle, if Trix Tank stepped up a little bit too far, Smileyface had to commit 2-3 ultimates, they had to commit actives. It's just like so much commitment for every single bit that they could take for themselves.
And I will say, while I don't think of anything immediately negative when I see that Nox, I don't necessarily think anything positive came out of that Nox either. So maybe something that you have to take back to the drawing board. You got a little bit of time now if you're Smileyface, since you've now been eliminated. Belt Slap coming into this last time, just yesterday even, lost 2-1 to the Poppies. Now the Poppies coming in with a 1-game advantage. It is a best of 5 that is going to change things up here that they're going to be playing up against, but we'll get more into that. Of course, you also have to look forward to the North American games that are going to be coming on a little bit later. Tahiti going up against Baskin and the boys, and then, of course, their winner going up against Locked and Goated, depending, actually, I think maybe fully, no matter what, a rematch in North America. I have to go look at my bracket just to make sure. And no, going to get one, at least at the very beginning of the day, between Baskin and the boys and Tahiti. So it'd be interesting to see if the SOC team's able to do something there they weren't able to do in Europe. But right now, when it comes to Poppies and it comes to Belt Slap, Mifflin, which way are you leaning? Yesterday was a pretty lengthy set.
It's so hard to predict. It was a long, very hard-fought set yesterday. But what the Poppies were able to do, they showed me that these guys have been working together and grinding every single night. Scrims, maybe 2-3 hours, and it's reflected in their play. They trust in each other, they play as a team, and I think if they are able to go the distance, they absolutely will. They play very similar to Sanguine, except instead of playing the meta picks and passively, Poppies are going to play whatever they want passively and then group up as 5 and absolutely run a match.
Yeah, yesterday we kept joking about it, but they were very adept at disengaging from a fight. If they didn't want to be in it, they were not in it. And so we'll have to see if they can bring that same style, or maybe if they want to get a little more aggressive and latch on to Belt Slap this time around. But that's going to be coming up in just a short break. Go ahead, grab yourself a snack, go get your drinks. If it's lunchtime for you, if you're in North America, go ahead and get it done, because we're going to be right back with Belt Slap versus Poppies.